Good afternoon, Sam, and we're back.
Hello, Kate. I have to say, this is a super exciting topic we've got today.
Yes, it is.
This one has meat on its bones.
It does, and it's one that everyone's interested in now because we're all trying to figure out how to navigate this new world of AI-powered marketing. And I think for a lot of people, they're firstly trying to figure out what it even is in the first place. And secondly, how do you use it to its maximum benefit and not fall into the pitfalls that it can have that you and I will discuss, and how very necessary it is to be aware of the pitfalls and how to best use it.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we've got some good... Oh, no, you go.
No.
So it's the reason we decided to talk about this today, well, partly is because you and I are both using AI in our business for email marketing, for social media posts, and our virtual assistants are using it on our behalf. And, so we wanted to share our experience with that and how it's really, and we've talked about this before, just moving away from the blank page syndrome and getting you over procrastination and sparking ideas and inspiration. But it's usually AI is probably 10-20% of the final product, right? It's something to start with, but then you have to do the work to make it meaningful and valuable. And that's what we wanted to talk about today.
Yes, definitely. I think AI is so remarkably powerful. The problem with it is that people are relying on it way too much to build out the entire piece of content for them. I think that we need to really learn to understand where the line is between what AI is going to do for us and then where we step in. Let's start by talking about, first and foremost, the prompts that you input into AI, because the quality of your prompts will determine the quality of the output.
Yeah, absolutely. And just stepping back for a moment, at a higher level, there's a few things we want to talk about around, the nitty-gritty of using AI itself and how to use good prompts, but also how do you use AI in your broader marketing strategy. And you and I started this topic because I was telling you about a great podcast that I listened to by a guy. Actually, it was the Jenny Blake Pivot podcast, which I really love. She's a business owner, all about getting more time freedom in business. And she had a guest on her podcast called Jay Akunzo. And he spoke my language and he articulated what I've been struggling with for some time. And he says, as business owners who want to put meaningful work out into the world and be thought leaders, we need to focus on resonance over reach. And that really, really struck me because I thought, yes. And I was telling you, Sam, he had a quote. He said, don't just take one turd and split it 20 ways and spray it across social media. Create something really meaningful and then put it out across social media with, and he had some great quotes. He said, create remarkable things and be more valuable rather than create more things and be more visible. And he says, your job is not to create content. Your job is to create connection. And that just really gave me permission to let go of this idea that I need to build this massive list or have a huge following. What I need to focus on is what I'm putting out resonates and it creates connection. And he said, we're relying on the wrong metrics. And rather than measuring likes and followers and email open rates, he said, you should be measuring your unsolicited response rate. So people who reach out to you off their own bat and say, wow, I loved what you wrote here. And I think that's the key thing for this discussion around AI marketing, isn't it? It's like people are, and you and I have said this a lot, Sam, people are sick of how to and generic stuff that you can now get through a prompt on ChatGPT. And what they actually crave is meaningful, valuable stuff that provides the human insight and the human experience around that. So, and having listening to that podcast just freed me up so much. And now I'm like, yep, what I'm going to put out now, I'm going to focus on it being meaningful and the intention to create connection, rather than trying to be this. We've always been taught that we need to be highly visible, but what does visible mean if you're not engaging and resonating and actually drawing people into your business?
Yeah, I actually had I blocked out my calendar this morning, Kate, to create video. So this morning was my video morning, and in creating those videos, like you're sitting here talking to yourself on camera. It's it is very tricky. It's very, very hard for a lot of people, but throughout that process, what I love is that I start saying things unconsciously, and that's where you find the real gold about what you're all about. So I was doing this video and I was talking about marketing, and I was like, we need to, it used to be advertising. Remember years and years ago, you're an ad man. No one did marketing. You worked in advertising. And then we had that transition into marketing. And I believe, I'll call it now, and maybe it's already happened and I'm the last, I don't know. But I think now we're seeing this transition where you're not going to work in marketing anymore. You're going to work in relationships, because that's what marketing has to be. It has to be about building relationships with people.
Yes.
So that was my epiphany of the day, is that I want to stop teaching people marketing as such, and really sharing how to create those connections and build relationships with people, because that's where you're going to get sales.
That's isn't it interesting how language is so important, and what you call something, because just that shift from calling it marketing to building relationships, what a totally different focus, but it feels like those are the right words to describe what we're actually doing.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. And you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
It's all about that. Funnels, nurture funnels, all of that stuff. It's all about the stages of building a human relationship, going from cold, where they don't know who you are, through to knowing who you are, liking what they see, inviting them on a date, doing all those little steps that are required to warm someone up to wanting to buy from you. Yeah, it's all about relationships. You're right. What a good epiphany.
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't know. Sometimes I wonder if I'm late to the party, but that was my
Me too.
thought for the day. Let's.
Intrinsically, you and I know that, because we've been teaching it for years. We've been teaching this concept of marketing in order to nurture a relationship, but we haven't called it that. It's still been under the banner of marketing. So it's just an interesting shift in language that actually, to me, feels way more meaningful.
It does. But here's the thing. When we shift the language and we say, let's stop calling it marketing, let's talk about how we build connections and how we cultivate relationships, then how does AI feed into that?
Yeah.
And how can you do that so that the human essence remains? Because you don't want AI taking over everything.
Yeah, and that's the juicy meat on the bones bit that you were talking about before, that we'll get into. Yeah. And the way I look at AI, it's just elevated what you can get from the internet, and makes it in a format that's easier to put out into the world. So, Google search engines, and all the other search engines too, they're great at collating information based on a keyword search, but you then have to translate that information into words that make sense in whatever format you're putting it out, whether it's a blog or a social media post or a newsletter. Whereas Bard and ChatGPT now do that bit for you. So you put your prompt in, it scours the internet, finds all that information, and then puts it together in a structure and a format that you can put out in whatever prompt you gave it. So it's just taken that brain processing power away from us, and hands you on a platter, well, based on all the stuff on the internet, this is how you could say what you've asked me. And and what I find is that what it comes back with is usually very generic. It's sort of standard marketing textbook stuff or business textbook stuff.
Mhm.
But then what it does is it helps me say, yep, great, okay. But the angle that I would add to this conversation, or the way I would add my insight into this, is, it's just the skeleton, as we said, and then you go in and it helps you think about, well, how do I think differently to what this is saying, and what's been my experience? And then it prompts you to think about, what's the human experience and story I'm going to share around this topic that people actually want to know about?
Yeah. I love calling it a skeleton, Kate, because straight away in my mind, I'm thinking a skeleton. If there were 10 skeletons lined up in front of me, given that, I know that there are structural differences in the human skeleton, but I couldn't tell you anything about any of those 10 skeletons. Those 10 skeletons that are standing in front of you, they won't communicate with just bones. They won't communicate what kind of person that skeleton belonged to. It won't communicate the struggles that they've been through or what they're looking for in life. None of those human qualities are evident in that skeleton. And I
Yeah.
think this is where absolutely use AI, grab that skeleton, but then you've
Mm.
got to build the person around
Mm-hmm.
that
The
skeleton.
flesh. Yeah. Yeah, and this
Yeah.
is where that whole thing of creating connection rather than, resonance rather than reach, this is where you've really got to think about, okay, what do I believe about this topic? What's been my experience? And how can I write something that's meaningful, that's going to resonate with my audience, because they've either lived that experience too, or they understand it, or that it gives them an insight that they maybe hadn't thought about.
Mhm.
Yeah. Mm.
Yeah, I think we're constantly looking for permission to do things, and AI, on one hand, it's giving you permission to create, but it's also, the downside of it is that it's giving us permission to be lazy in that creation.
Mm.
And I
Mm-hmm.
think this is where people fall into the trap, like you say, of just churning out crappy content,
Mm-hmm.
crappy AI produced content, without being highly skilled in using AI and
Mm.
highly skilled and really educated in how you craft those prompts to get
Mm-hmm.
quality information out of the AI. But then also, whatever you're putting in, like whatever you're trying to extract out of the AI, you have to have a knowledge of that, because we all know that AI lies. If there's one
It
thing we all
does.
have in common with AI, it makes stuff up.
Yep.
So if you aren't an expert already, or if you don't have a pretty good knowledge base already of the topic that you're trying to create content about or trying to create a course about, then this is where the product quality is going to really let you down. Because
Mm.
if you read through that, it might sound wonderful, but you have to know whether it's accurate or not.
Yeah, and I have a really embarrassing story to share with that, and I'm sharing it in the hopes that it helps people just be aware. Because I was asked to by a client to figure out where the which award submissions she could go for her businesses. And I thought,
Oh,
amazing. So I'll go to Google Bard and I just put in award submissions for this type of business in 2023 Australia. And it came back with a list. And I was like, brilliant. I mean, this has just saved me hours of scouring the internet trying to figure out. And then I asked it submission dates, and it gave me all the details. It was like, right, if you want this award, it opens this date, closes this date. And I just thought, brilliant. Copy pasted into an email, sent to her, only to
oh,
realize that about 50% of it was just inaccurate and not true at all. And then she came
oh,
back to me
really?
later. Yeah, she came back later and said, "We'd really like to apply for this one. Can you put that in progress?" So then I go to the website to do that and realize the dates are all wrong. It's not actually even active anymore. There were a couple that had been, and it made me look really bad. I mean, she understood and she
Oh,
was great. It was a good client to have that mistake with because she was very forgiving and it didn't seem to affect anything. But just a heads up, people, do not take what it says as gospel. You've got to go fact check it. And I don't know where it got that information from. Like, because those websites that it pulled up for me did not have that information on them. So it got me thinking, what's going on here? Yeah.
yeah.
Mm.
So, yeah, that's a problem.
Yes, it is. And if you
Yeah.
don't know, you can really get yourself in trouble by relying on it. You cannot have blind faith in what it
Mhm.
pulls back for you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. That's oh dear.
Yeah.
Yeah, that could have ended up really badly. So yeah,
Yes.
you do need to check the output. And this is why if you're just getting it to give you an outline of something and then you're going to fill in the blanks,
Mm-hmm.
that's where it works beautifully.
Yeah.
And also, Kate, I quite often feel like I can't articulate what I want to say very
Mm-hmm.
clearly.
Mm-hmm.
It sounds wonderful in my head, but I can't sometimes seem to get the words to that I speak to sound the way I think they should in my head. And this is where I love AI because when I don't feel highly skilled in copywriting. So when I've got to pull together a headline and things like that, this is where
Mm.
AI is just magic
Mm.
because, you know, it it doesn't have the barriers and belief systems that are blocking me from creating that stuff. So
Mm.
when I say this is the topic, give me 10 headlines, um, I find that really beneficial to,
Mm.
pick and choose in that list. So, in that respect, that's a brilliant use of AI.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. It is, and it helps you think of things that wouldn't pop into your head otherwise. So, normally in the old days, I should say, as in 6 months ago, you had to come up with all in the old days, but you had to
Yeah.
come up with the ideas yourself.
Yeah.
And for a headline, for example, like you and I have been using these headline analyzers for a long time, where you
Yes.
put you put a headline in and it analyzes the emotive content to tell you how what the click through rate is likely to be, and they use a red light green light system where if it's not over a score of 70 and gives you a green light, then it's not going to get click throughs because it's not emotive enough. And that's
Mhm.
AI in itself. That's based on decades of marketing research and what gets clicked on and what doesn't. And they've put that into this headline analyzer format. And previously you'd have to think of headline ideas to put into that analyzer. And now you get AI to generate the ideas and then you just play with them until you get the green light. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
and that's another example where the headlines that it comes up with are good. They're good ideas, but you still got to test whether they'll actually be a good headline from a marketing perspective. If you know what I mean?
Yes.
Mm.
Yeah. But of course, behind every little piece of marketing, there has to be an overall plan
Mm.
and a strategy, doesn't
And
there?
we've just been talking about this, haven't we, in recent
We
times?
have, we have. And this is another area where you can definitely bring AI into the conversation to help
Mm.
you craft that strategy and create that plan.
Mm.
That's another really good use of AI because it's going to and this I want people to know that just because AI has spat out this strategy doesn't mean you have to follow it.
Mm.
Like, don't be lazy when you're using the AI. So it'll spit out a strategy. And this is where, when I'm teaching people how to use AI, I tell them don't just accept the first thing that spits out
Mm.
because this is about refining your responses and refining the output of the AI.
Mm.
It's only ever going to be as capable as the inputs. I've said this many times. So when you are crafting a strategy, you still have to have a bit of knowledge yourself to look at it and understand how and why this strategy is going to work for you.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Mm.
And you have to, if you're using AI to develop your marketing plan, well, it's great if you've got this really well thought out marketing plan that AI's, handed you on a silver platter. But are you going to execute?
Mm.
Because the
Yeah.
AI is not going to do, the AI isn't going to get you to sit there and create the video content, or it's, there's no accountability there.
Mm.
It's just giving you data.
Mm.
I AI is just a tool, and I
Mm.
think people are making it out to be a lot more than
Yes.
that.
Yeah, it's curation. Yeah, it's pulling stuff from a lot of different places and pulling
Yeah.
it into one. Yeah. Yeah, and that's all it
Yeah.
can and ever will be, because it's dependent on what exists on the net already on that topic. And back to your thing about marketing strategy, yes, it'll spit out a generic marketing strategy, but do you want to be generic? Do you want to
Mhm.
sit in the pond with all the other, people in your business field? No, this is where the thought leader thing comes in, and you've got to think really carefully about, how do I talk about my topic in a way that's meaningful and that resonates with my specific ideal clients and the people I'm trying to help. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's mm, mm. Sorry, we
Sorry,
just
I'm
had a
gonna
mental
I
blank, didn't we?
did
We just both had a
no,
mental blank.
because your video keeps cutting out.
Oh, I know, and it does end up looking
I
okay
can't
in the
see
final
you, so
version.
I don't know if you're
Mm. All right,
yeah,
minute
but
20.
because I can't see you, I don't know if you finish talking sometimes.
Ah, it's really hard, isn't it? Um, 21 minutes.
Yeah.
20. I'm just going to tell Sindri we've got a thing we need to edit between 20 22 minutes. Okay, but we're back. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yes. So
So
with, I think
AI.
mm, this whole topic of differentiating yourself now in a very crowded market, because most people are now jumping on the AI wave and seeing it as an opportunity to put content out relatively easily, which means the noise level has just gone up significantly. So there's a lot of stuff out there on the internet, but how do you stand out? How do you differentiate yourself? And that's where the critical thought and the human story and experience part comes in. And this whole, the field now has been leveled to some extent, because previously people like yourself, Sam, who find it hard to just, I'm not saying I find it easy, but words sort of come easier to me. People find it hard to come up with a blog post, for example. That's now sort of been taken away to some extent, because you can get a skeleton content very easily. And then, so the level field's been evened quite a bit in terms of the ease of content creation, but elevating yourself above that is what we all have to consciously do, and continuously, like, that's going to be my mantra now: create connection. What was it? Your job is not to create content, your job is to create connection, and strive for
Yes.
resonance over reach. So making each piece of content that you put out there count more. It's not just about spraying your stuff far and wide. It's got to resonate, because resonance, as we know through Simon Sinek's work, is what inspires action. So when someone resonates at a core values level, that's what inspires them to take action, and nothing else will. So no matter how much stuff you spray far and wide, and you might be looking good to yourself because your reach is looking great, on all your metrics on socials, but what's the resonance, and therefore what's the level of engagement, and how many people are reaching out to you to work with you? That's what's important. So I love that resonance over reach. That's going to be my new mantra, I think.
Yes, I like it. I need to write that one down.
Yeah. And I think for all our clients, it's important, because even our virtual assistants, as we know, Sam, who we love and they're so valuable, they're trained to be pushing us to be visible constantly. And And that's what they're meant to do, because yes, visibility is important. The more top of mind you are for someone, for your audience at any point, the more likely they are to think of you when in conversation and someone needs a business or marketing coach. So it's important to be visible. But even in my conversations with our VAs, I find myself getting pulled into that. Just need to get content out, And yes, you do, but I'm trying to pull back at the moment and really think hard for myself. What is my differentiating point? How do I see things differently and put my angle on things so that it's meaningful and it helps someone else who feels the same way? And I've got good examples of it. I'm sure you do too, but I'm on so many email lists, as I'm sure you are, Sam. And there's been a few people that I've stayed on their email lists like continuously. And it's because the newsletters they put out are meaningful, and I love what they have to say each time. And yeah, he is always on my mind as the mentor I'll reach out to when, for that next sort of level of growth. And actually, he put a really interesting one out just yesterday. His name's Jeffrey Van Dyke in the US. And he put out a newsletter called "Is Your Calling an Obligation?" And that was just a really fascinating question, which made me, of course, eat up his email, because I find that coaching business clients as well, who they feel this calling, but are they obligated to follow it, and at what cost? And so reading that article made me think and reflect, and it resonated. So that's the kind of stuff I think we want. And you say you've had good feedback on your newsletters where people have resonated with something and it's landed and it's meant something, and that's what we need to be striving for.
Yes. And the feedback that I received yesterday about my email newsletter that went out this week, and because I'm determined to be very honest about how I operate my business, and I said, she was talking about, the email that you sent this week, and I said, I have to be honest, I actually don't know what email went out this week. Now, I had that initial, this is really embarrassing because I don't even know what was going on. But I went on to say, content isn't something that I can be regimented about creating. So when I'm in the right frame of mind, and when, all the pieces of the universe are sitting perfectly and I can churn out content, I like to sit there and keep churning it out while I'm on a roll, so flow state, Kate.
And batching.
When I'm in that flow.
Yeah. And batching, as we always say, is maximum efficiency.
Correct. So I might sit there and produce 3, 6, 10 emails. And what I do is then I set them up and I queue them 7 days apart in my CRM. So I never have to worry about if I miss a week or anything like that. My newsletter is still going to go out. What it also means is that, sometimes I interrupt that automation to put out something that's a hot topic for today. But generally speaking, these stories are in a queue and they're going to go out. So I'm not exactly sure which one went out this weekend.
Which is an amazingly efficient business tactic, yeah.
Yes. And I shared this with her because I'm sitting here telling you as my client that we need to do these things to make our life easier. Because if I have to force myself to sit down every Wednesday morning and write that email newsletter to go out Wednesday afternoon, you know what's going to happen, because that's not my thing. That's not the thing that I'm really good at. And it's not the thing that I get really excited about doing. That becomes the chore that I will then start to avoid.
Yes, and not do. And that's such an interesting point. Really harnessing those flow state moments is so important, isn't it? Yeah. When you're in that zone, just keep going and don't stop the flow, because it doesn't come that often. Yeah.
Yeah. And of course, the other part of that is that I do absolutely use AI to help me write those emails. And again, this is all about me feeling like I don't necessarily articulate myself very well sometimes. Sometimes I do. Sometimes I sit there and I type the words and it reads beautifully. Sometimes I read it and I'm like, I know what I'm trying to say. I just don't know how to say it. And this is where I'm using AI to rewrite and rewrite and rewrite, because it does it in like, half a second. It'll rewrite a paragraph for me till I find, that's landed. That version has landed. That's the version, I'm going to replace this paragraph here and do that kind of work. So AI is really bailing me out sometimes when I'm blocked. But I think that's it, maybe because that's how I do it. But I think that's a constructive use of AI without it taking over everything.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And you've touched on quite a few important things there, where, getting into that habit of writing multiple blogs or batching your time. We always say this, and I find it a challenge sometimes because, often we're caught up in client work or coaching sessions, and you simply don't have enough time to really leverage that flow state that you get into, which is frustrating when it comes and you can't use it. But and so I do find myself in phases of not having a backlog of content and then having to put something out and occasionally not, and then the guilt and that feeling of I haven't put anything out in weeks. Whereas getting ahead of the game, like you said, and batching 6 to 10 emails to just be sitting there to go out whenever you need them to is so important, because that regular contact really does send a message to your database that you're professional, you're organized, you're on top of things, you're thinking, you're sharing your expertise, so it doesn't take a lot of effort to get around to get into that zone. But I know so many business owners struggle with email marketing, with the social media marketing. And so do you have any tips, Sam, about how what was the point that you started batching your content? Is that something you do naturally anyway, or did you have to get yourself into a bit of a system?
No, I don't have a system. I certainly have the moments of panic where I'm like, oh my goodness, has my automation run out of newsletter emails?
Oh, yeah.
I think just for me, because I did, like I say, I actually really struggled with, I tried time blocking. So I tried time blocking in my calendar to get all of these things done, to tick all those boxes that said you must write a blog this week and you must write an email newsletter this week, you must do these social posts. And I tried the time blocking thing and it didn't work for me. Even though I set that system up and I set my calendar up and it was all color coordinated and looked amazing, but
executing,
I then fought myself on following that. And I was resisting doing this regimented, today you must feel creative because you've got to do this. Today you must feel this because you've got to do that. I didn't fall into that. So I was done before I even started. So I had to really explore and look around and find all different ways, and I watched YouTube videos and did a whole heap of research on different systems and different methodologies for being able to do everything that you need to do. So I now have I have like an umbrella over my calendar, and it's this week, this is the master project that you work on. And if I'm in flow state for writing, then I will write whatever I need to write for that overarching umbrella. And if I'm feeling like, I need to crunch some numbers, then that's what I will do under the guise of this umbrella. So that's how I'm working, because otherwise I was so resistant to that flow state and I like to be in the mood to do something, because when I'm in the mood to do it, I can do it really well.
Yeah. So you've taken the pressure off. The time blocking can be a good tactic, but you're right. It doesn't allow for the flow state. Creativity isn't a tap that you can just turn on when
it's not. No.
I mean, you can block time to say, do your account reconciliation every month, or, and you might not want to do it, but you can just go in and blindly do it, and whereas writing a blog doesn't happen if you're just not in the headspace. So
No.
I think what you said is really good about just making sure that whenever you have the flow, leveraging it as much as you can, and don't stop at one email. Can you bang out another one and another one? Because it gets faster the more you do. So it flows more.
Yeah, especially when you've got, your AI buddy sitting there helping you with, like I'm using AI, for example, email newsletters. I will ask AI to punch out 6 for me. If I'm in the writing mood, punch out 6. So where am I going from email 1 to email 6? Like what steps am I taking in there? I get AI to help me with that. And then I pick up the outline it's given me and I'm like, okay, now I've got to fill in the blanks.
Beautiful.
So then I'm like, what stories have I got? What experiences have I got that really demonstrate,
that point.
this thing that, yeah.
Excellent.
And I think that not having to put so much energy into the structure and being allowed to put energy into the creative and connection side of it, this is where I'm finding it easy to just create the work.
Beautiful. That's a really good point for everyone listening. Yeah, so it might not be the actual content of the newsletter, but it's that structure where you say, hey, help me generate some ideas on this topic so that I can talk about it. So say, I think when you were working towards your time freedom formula, is that what you called it? Something.
Well, that's an iteration, Kate, but...
Yeah. Is that an example of where you used AI to plan out your build up to that launch?
Absolutely. And that has ended up being a catalyst for what is now the overarching program, because there were so many moving parts in that, and I wanted to bring it all together and unify and have it make sense inside of a bigger picture, which is a whole other story. But yes, absolutely, I used AI to start mapping out that course and that program. And again, AI spat out all of this stuff about, these are the modules and everything. I think I probably got AI to do that at least half a dozen times. And then what I did was knowing, and I punched in, this is the audience and this is who I am. And I did all of that stuff. And I wanted different iterations of what this program could look like. And then what I did was I sat there with the output from AI and I said, these are the modules that really resonate with me. These are what I feel I'm the most expertise in. So I'm going to pluck those 2 from that iteration and this one from over here. And that's how I've ended up where I have. So again, it's not about taking verbatim that AI output.
You're using it as fuel for your own thought processes. It's helping you distill your own thinking and crystallize things for you, because it's like having a little business buddy sitting there to bounce ideas off, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah. And because I'm a bit of a night owl and everybody my husband goes to bed very, very early because he gets up very early in the morning for work. So once all the kids go to bed, I'll admit, and this might be really embarrassing, but anyway, I'll admit that I have sat there for hours having conversations with ChatGPT, fascinated by the output and the rabbit holes that I've gone down with this thing. But the time that I've invested, and I'm calling it that, an investment in time, not, because I've got no friends at 11 o'clock at night. But I've invested an awful lot of time in learning how to communicate with AI, and not just ChatGPT. I've played with quite a few of the toys in the toy box. So
what are the other toys that you've played with, just for the audience? Because I think what I'm finding is that all the discussion out there in the internet is about ChatGPT, and I'm thinking, but it's only up to 2021. Why is no one talking about the others that are available that are not time constrained, but everyone seems to be stuck on ChatGPT, and it is good. But yeah, tell us some of the other tools.
Yeah. So look, as far as AI tools go, I have started using AI to take meeting notes for my session
Yes.
coaching clients.
Using Read
So
AI?
I can't just use one. I have to try a few. So I've definitely used Read AI.
Which is brilliant.
I've had a trial of Fireflies, but my favorite one for meetings is called Supernormal. So
And just so for the audience who might not know what Read AI is, it's an app that you can activate in your Zoom meetings that actually transcribes your meeting, sends you a summary, sends you immediate summary notes, actions that you agreed, tells you the sentiment of the meeting. It's just incredible. So if you've got that going on all your meetings, you'll never forget what was said ever again. And the actions are all laid out for you, and it's surprisingly accurate.
Yeah. So as a coach, this is one of the things that I was always really bad at. I love to write things down during the meeting. I don't like to type on a keyboard and so that it's done as we go. What I'm writing down is particular words that I notice clients say that I'm like, that's an interesting choice of word. And I end up with a whole heap of stuff on a page that doesn't make sense. And it's certainly not a dot point of this is what happened in the meeting. If you looked at my client meeting notes, you would not make sense of them. The problem was that I couldn't make sense of them when I looked at them, a few days later. And I'm very bad at what comes next. I dive into these coaching sessions, but I'm not good at typing it all up and sending everything on afterwards. So this has been a life changer for me in my business.
So tell us about Supernormal. What's the
Supernormal?
Yeah, what is it? How is it different to Read AI, and how is it better?
Well, one of the things that I don't like about Read AI is that it's like another person in the meeting. So
yes, it feels a bit confidential breach or something, doesn't it?
Yeah. So I don't like that. Whereas Supernormal is invisible. You don't know Supernormal's there. But I think, one of the things I like about Supernormal is that it gives you a lot more free hours because let's face it, I want to use the free stuff so that I can recommend it to people.
Yes.
Because we're working with a lot of startups and cash-strapped businesses, Kate.
Yeah.
So
they're bootstrapping.
they need to know what they can do for free. So I'm all about let's do free so that I can tell people how well it works. But I know Read AI is free as well. I just like Supernormal better. I like the transcription. I like the notes. I like the action steps. The sentiment is a fascinating thing. Like when it tells you about the percentage of time each person was speaking, and it even interprets the sentiment behind the meeting, like 70% was positive and 20% was negative. It's all interesting information. But anyway, I just like Supernormal. I like it operating in the background, and it gives you like 20 hours of meeting notes a month for free. So
wow. I love the sound of that, because I have to say, even though I'm an advocate of AI, the first time I met with a client who had AI activated, and I had to give it permission to record and transcribe, and I didn't really know this client very well yet, and I was a bit hesitant it felt like a breach of confidential privacy. And yet I had to accept it and to have this meeting with her. And yeah, that having someone else in the room, it does shift. Well, it's just interesting. So the fact that Supernormal operates in the background, I find that very appealing. I'm going to have to give it a go.
Yeah. Yeah, I like Supernormal. I'm just checking out my Chrome extensions because a lot of this stuff is Chrome extensions. So I won't go through my list, but there is a Chrome extension which is an AI that helps you to develop systems for your business. And it does that by you turn it on, and then you do a task online. So you might be copying and pasting from one website to another website, whatever it is you're doing, but it's recording what you're doing, and it then sets that up as a process, step-by-step process with screen grabs and all this sort of stuff. That's phenomenal for businesses,
Yes.
because, I'm like, you need to systemize your business, because you need to have consistent
efficient.
operations.
Mm.
Yes. And if you can set those systems up before you ever even think about having a team of any kind, it just makes that transition to having a team so much simpler, because you've already got the systems in place. They're tried and tested because you've been using them for however long. But yeah, the fact that there is an AI tool that will record you online and turn that into a system, I think that is brilliant.
That is.
There's some
And is
phenomenal
it part
AI.
of Supernormal? Is that part of Supernormal as well?
No, that's not Supernormal. That's a different Chrome extension. I can't remember what it's called.
Okay,
But
I'd be curious to hear what that one is.
Out for the show notes. I need to find it. The AI inside of Canva, because we're Canva fans, aren't we, Kate?
Oh, absolutely. Don't tell the graphic designers out there, but yes.
So the AI that is reaching its tentacles throughout Canva is amazing, because it's not just about magic, right? But it's the ability to tell it what graphics you want to create. And I have very, very mixed results with that, I have to say.
Well, it's in early days, isn't it?
It is early days. But, the AI in Canva is just really good, again, if you're a little bit stuck for special posts.
This whole concept of generative AI is just fascinating, because we've had AI for decades. It's not like it's new.
Yeah.
It's just artificial intelligence, using computing power to come up with human solutions. But this generative AI, which is what all these things are, ChatGPT, Bard, and then what you're talking about, the image generation in Canva, and Midjourney is the new image one.
Yes.
And what that can do is just mind-blowing. It can create real-life looking portraits of anyone you put the characteristics in. It's not an actual human that exists, and yet they look so real, to the wrinkles on their face, the squint in their eye, and so this generative AI is what we're all talking about since GPT was released last November, isn't it? And I imagine Canva, knowing what kind of company they are, which is just always at the forefront of all the technologies, I imagine this image generation, like, they must be really trying to position themselves ahead of the game, because they know that's what their audience wants, their member platform. I mean, imagine you just go in there and say, I need a graphic to put into my group about our webinar tomorrow, and then it does. It knows your brand colors, it knows your style, like, over time, because it's a learning system.
Yes.
I mean, the power the potential that has to just totally transform your business is interesting. And I know that an interesting question, because you and I and a lot of our listeners use virtual assistants, and I know that initially I was way back, again 6 months ago, when I realized that my VA was actually just using AI to generate my captions. I was like, oh my God, that's cheating. And what, I'm paying you to put a prompt in and spit back a thing in 15 seconds, and you're charging me for 2 hours? Yes. I think there's this whole grace landscape now where people are paying virtual assistants, and because they now have all these tools at their disposal to do their work very quickly and efficiently, it's raising that question about value for money, isn't it? So it's a tricky one.
Yeah, I love that you've raised that about social media, because there are AI tools out there. There are platforms out there that you can plug your RSS feed into. So it's, you hit publish on the blog on your website, and then you open up this tool on your computer, and it is going to pull captions out of your RSS fed blog for you. And then it's going to schedule on social media. It's going to pick up the images you've used in your blog, and it's going to attach those to the captions.
Wow.
That's all AI.
That's incredible, because then you just produce one blog and the content goes out. Wow.
Yeah.
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 So there really are no excuses anymore for not being visible. Yeah. But again, it's about making that central piece of content a very meaningful, valuable piece of content.
Yes. And which goes back to what we were saying, is that as long as that cornerstone content that you're creating, if that is the connection piece and that is the relationship building piece, then absolutely use AI to dive in and pull that apart and pull it into bits and pieces, all your social posts and everything, because the origin of all of that content that the AI is pulling is the genuine you.
Yes.
It's what you've created.
That's so interesting, because that's what we've traditionally paid virtual assistants to do, is take our blog and repurpose and put it out there, and we pay, some good money for that process. And now if that's done via an AI-powered tool, it makes that VA process redundant. And this is where I think virtual assistants are really going to have to level up in how they add value to businesses as well. And you and I are fortunate to have this amazing girl that you found on Upwork who really does that. She takes on your business as though it's your own, and she's thinking strategically and big picture, and she's elevated herself to the point where her skills are above what AI can do. But there are so many virtual assistants that purely repurpose or they're taking, they're generating general content to go out and so on. And that's the bit via Canva or these other tools that's going to become instantaneous at the flick of a switch. So they are at risk there, I think, if they don't start leveling up the way they deliver value to businesses.
Yes.
Interesting.
Yeah, you've always got to protect your skill set, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And you definitely need to try and master AI and be in control of it rather than letting it control you.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, brilliant. I can't wait to... Does that exist already, this RSS AI tool?
Yes. Yeah, it does.
I have to get onto that.
So another one for the show notes.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, so you don't know the name right now? You put it in the...
No, this is where my brain lets me down. I can never think of these things. Like, I know what it does, but I can't remember the name of it. But I will find it in my computer.
Yeah.
Because the problem is I play with so many things in my research and my experiment.
Yeah. Which I love about you, Sam. You're always ahead of the latest tips and tricks and automation tools, and it's brilliant. Yeah.
Yeah. I wouldn't say I'm an expert level in any of it, but
you don't need to be.
I feel like I've got an overview. I feel like I've got an overview of what's out there. So
and you found ways to make it work for you and your business, which is most important, and helping clients do the same. Yeah.
Is it really embarrassing to admit that I do, like, one of my pastimes when I'm not talking to ChatGPT late at night is there are a couple of different websites that I look at, and it gives you a summary of the latest launches of tech tools and apps and things like that. And that is embarrassing to say that in my free time I do sit there and read, but I get really excited about the developments in technology and the capabilities that are out there.
Yeah.
And of course, I'm always ever mindful of what this means for people as well.
Yeah. I wouldn't be embarrassed about that at all. I mean, it just makes you a really valuable person who's always at the forefront. And I'm a bit like...
And a nerd.
Yeah, but kudos to the nerds. That's, it's...
Well, the real nerds are the ones that are actually creating these things, and that's pretty phenomenal.
Absolutely. Yeah. And what's... I just feel like we're living at a really interesting and pivotal time where things are shifting and we don't know where it's going to go. But I feel it's for the better. It's just elevating all of us in how we approach business, efficiency, life. Yeah, it's we're moving up the Maslow's hierarchy is how it seems, you know. Yeah.
Hope so. Hope so. But yeah,
Mm,
look, the whole theme of today's conversation is that, you know, while AI, you know, and all the media surrounding AI and takeover, and you know, even all the movies. I think I've been on a bit of a string of movies that involve, you know, AI takeover.
Avatar and
Yeah,
Spider-Man and yeah.
and I watched Megan the other day, or Megan,
Mm,
depending on how you want to pronounce it. You know, that
mm.
AI doll thing that
Right, I
was
haven't
like
seen
a
that.
really bad horror movie
Right.
slasher. But do you find, this is my observation, is that whenever anything happens in the world, you can go back on average about 10 years and you will find that there was a theme about 10 years before of movies about the exact thing that's now happened.
Ah, yes. Interesting.
Yeah. So this is where because I'm conscious of this, I'm like, the movies that are coming out now, it's like, what does this mean for us in 10 years' time? Because they seem to be some kind of weird predictor of our future.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's almost like the incubator of the next phase of human evolution, isn't it? The only one that took
Yeah.
a bit longer has been Back to the Future. We haven't figured out time travel yet.
No, we haven't. Or have we?
Um,
And, you know, all the billionaires just haven't told us about it. Elon Musk would have
mm,
bragged about that by now if he
yeah,
was onto
surely.
it.
Sure he's got a teleporting machine in his house somewhere.
Well, maybe he has figured it out and that's how he's operating. That's how he's being
Maybe.
successful, because he's
Mm.
zapping into the future and then bringing it to the past.
Ah, yes, yes, interesting. Well, anyway, we have
Yes.
to wrap this up, Sam. But yeah, I'd love to, any questions that anyone has on AI, if you want us to address them, we can do our very best, to talk about how we're using it in our businesses. And yeah,
Yeah.
we hope this has been a helpful and valuable episode for you all. Did you have any closing comments, Sam?
Oh, I should have got AI to write something for me, shouldn't I? No, but let's put it out into the universe that we do need AI to start doing school runs for us. That would be
Mm.
a welcome artificial intelligence add-on.
Yes, folding, washing, and ironing would be another good one. Uh,
Yeah,
oh, yeah.
yeah,
Anyway, well, it's been
yeah.
lovely chatting to you.